You want me to start it out?
All right, so this week on the podcast, we're going to be talking with my buddy Josh. Josh went out on like a shed hunting, trail camera check, recon type thing. That's what we're calling it. We're calling it the recon. So he went out, he was looking for sheds in a couple of the areas on the property. We're looking for a couple of mature bucks. We're looking for Buster, we're looking for Tank. Also, it's finally stopped raining in Oklahoma, so we can go check our trail cameras. That's the main reason Josh was out there. So I'm going to let Josh talk a little bit about what he saw today, and we'll go from there. All right, Josh, it's up to you, man.
Yeah, like Rob said, we've been trying for like the last month to get back out there. I mean, we went out about roughly a month ago, and set up his trail camera and kind of did a little just shed hunting while we could with my dad and everything. And ever since then, it's been trying to fight against rain to go out, or, family getting in the way of stuff, and not really making a complaint about that. It's just trying to find the time. And then this last week I actually had to take off for having surgery and stuff, and was finally cleared this week, and I was like, it's been too long, I gotta go. I can't take this anxiety anymore. I gotta get out in the woods and be back with nature. So I went out today and kind of did a little, just what we were going with recon here, and mainly was going out trying to see if I could see any activity, if anything had changed in the, land with all the rain, if we have more standing water, if our ponds are filling up, kind of just seeing what's changed and seeing if I could just miraculously fall onto one of Tank or Buster's sheds, and even two other mature bucks we've got that we've kind of watched and we haven't really hit too hard on because they're so much younger than the other two, but they're Captain and Biggin. They're 2 8 points, but they just got a lot of character to their antlers and their bodies and everything. But so anyway, says I was out there, I was looking around, trying to walk around as much as I can in areas where we know that they bed and these bucks spend a lot of time. And just being one guy, it was a lot of ground to cover, trying to do it, and not having as much time as I would have loved to have out there. But it ended up, kind of being a bust day. Didn't find any antlers, didn't see any bucks myself or any deer as a matter of fact, but it was kind of hot. But seeing a ton of activity and stuff, and there's been a lot of change to our property with this property we hunt with just the water alone, and seeing how the deer are reacting to it, and even other critters, and stuff, how they're reacting to it, was very interesting and very beneficial for Rob and I.
So for sure, like Josh was talking about, there's lots of different animals interacting with the way the water changed the property a little bit. So where I had one of my cameras set up was on one of our spots we call the hidden pond. And, this pond's normally dry. It might have like a foot of water in it, maybe, in the fall normally. But with all the recent rain we've had, I've been worried about my trail camera, because it's right on the bank. And, I didn't really know how high the water would get in this pond, so I've been worried about the trail camera a lot. I didn't know if I was going to be getting trail camera pictures of fish or what was going to happen. So I was excited to know that when Josh got out there, my trail camera was still alive. But we were talking about different critters. So one of the trail camera pictures that we got is actually a really cool picture, because it's a picture of a hawk coming in, like flying straight towards the trail camera, and it has grabbed a snake out of the pond, like some type of water snake, and it's flying off with it. And it's got, we got a picture of it lifting off with the snake in his hand. It's a pretty cool picture, and you guys should definitely go check that out on the Devoted Outdoorsman Facebook page. I posted that on March 16th at around 9 o'clock, so you guys can probably find it if you go check it out. Like me and Josh were talking about earlier before we started the podcast, I was asking him about the field, because a large part of this property is a big field, and in the summertime it's planted in soybeans, in the wintertime it's planted in winter wheat. So it's kind of a big change from winter to summertime. So I was really wondering how much the winter wheat had taken off, but Josh kind of saw it today, so let's see what Josh has to say about that.
Yeah, getting out there and putting the boots on the ground was a big thing today, with wanting to check on most of the food source areas and water sources. And the field being one of our biggest concerns, because it does provide one of our, if not our biggest support of food throughout the year. And knowing that it's planted in winter wheat right now, just kind of wanting to see how it handled with all the rain and everything, because that field has typically has areas that like to flood and stay flooded, so nothing will grow for a while. But getting out there, I mean, it looked just like an ocean of green. It was a beautiful sight. I mean, talking winter wheat that was up several inches and got good, spread on it itself of several inches wide and everything. Very thick, and I mean, in the areas that we would normally expect for it to be barren and dry just from any amount of water, it was probably the thickest there and everything. So it actually produced, several areas of heavy traffic for deer that I could see from footprints from ranging from old mature bucks looking to, brand new fawns that seemed like little tiny just deer prints. And even in there seeing coyote tracks and raccoons and everything else that you could think of, they'd just be walking around feeding on the edge of a food source.
So did you actually see any turkey tracks out there, man? Because I've been wondering a lot about that because we haven't necessarily seen any turkey in the area. And, that part of the state has a turkey population, but we haven't seen any in the area that we're hunting.
No, I actually didn't see any turkey tracks anywhere, but like you said, it is a very heavily populated area around there for turkeys. I mean, I've told you about the times I've been driving out there, driving back into my place, and you go across the road, and all of a sudden you come out and there's a flock of what seems to be like 50 to 100 turkeys just going across the road trying to get to the next feeding area. But at our place, I haven't seen any tracks or any sign that says that we have them. But I know within a very close proximity to our property, there are turkeys within that area.
So the property, let's talk a little bit about the property. So the property is kind of set up like a rectangle, sort of. But there's like on the, let's see, it'd be the northwest corner, there's about a 15-acre square that jots off. And most of it is a field, like I was saying. Most of it, probably about half of it's a field. And then all of our wooded areas are on the sides. But the positive thing about why this property is a good property is because of the topography set up in this area. So to our east, there is a valley that kind of breaks off the edge of this field, kind of goes down into a nice valley. And down in the bottom is where we find a lot of the deer activity coming out of. There's also a really nice bedding area on the west side. It's super thick, lots of cedar trees and briars. It's just a real thick area, and that butts right up to the winter wheat field. So, like, right now, I guarantee, all the deer are coming out of there. They're going out and eating winter wheat at night and going right back into bed. So I think that has brought a hard time upon us when we're trying to find sheds. That's why, the past 2 times we've gone, it's come up goose egg, is because I think the deer are spending most of their time back either in that valley or down in that bedding area, that covered area. So I'm sorry for the little interruption we just had. My dogs were going ape in the backyard. I don't really know why. Possum, whatever it was, but we're back. So, like we were talking about, the middle of this area is the field. Soybean in the summertime, wintertime it's winter wheat, and on the edges is where we're kind of hunting, where most of our deer come out of, either in that, first 15 or 20 minutes of sunlight, or at the end of the day when, it's that perfect hour. They start coming out and feeding because they've been bedded down all day.
Yeah, I mean, like you're talking about the topography of all this property itself. You're anywhere you stand on it, you're either way up in the air or you're way down low. There's never a flat spot here, and it creates a lot of funnel areas, channels, and stuff that the deer seem to really like to travel to go, from one side to the other, or even just from bedding to a food source. And hunting the edges has been our tactic, and it's paid off for us so far. But, just the sign and activity I saw today alone, just on the edges of everything, was unbelievable from what it was just a month ago. And just anything else that goes along with them traveling back and forth is just, I couldn't believe the level of activity that I saw.
Definitely the sign in the area from the videos and the pictures that Josh, took today, because I wasn't there in person, I had to be at work, but there was definitely a lot of activity coming out of those thickets. And, one thing about this property that's kind of unique is on the east side of the property, there's a, 20-acre pen that used to have elk in it, like a long time ago had elk in it. So it's got probably a 10-foot fence around it. So over the years, the edges of the north side of this fence has become kind of like a little travel corridor. So when the farmer comes in and he plants all the soybeans and everything, he can't necessarily get too close to that fence with his booms and stuff. So he's left a pretty, like, I don't know, it's not very big, maybe like 20 yards of pretty thick brush right there. So the deer will walk that edge, and they feel pretty safe as they're making their way across this field, and then they'll dart down into that valley on the other side.
Yeah, like you pointed out, we have the old elk pen and everything, and the north side of it, we got that huge travel corridor that leads up to the side of it, which the side of the elk pen actually brings that field to kind of a narrow point right there, which creates a shallow channel for them to cross the other side and get into the bedding areas. But there's been a lot of activity, even just through hunting season, sitting there. And I had several encounters where I decided to just go kind of sit and watch and see if I could get a chance at a deer or something with a bow, and just kind of sitting on the ground trying out different spots that we hadn't normally thought to try before. And ended up looking up from one direction. I'm staring a buck or doe right in the face, and they thankfully didn't know I was right where I was. I mean, knew I was in the area, trying to figure out exactly where I was, but created several interesting encounters and stuff, and actually gave Rob and I a lot of insight in how to, one, hunt the deer, but two, how are they actually traveling across, and where are they crossing, times of day at which they're doing it.
So what's kind of funny about this property is I went out there. I never really, I set foot on it last summer, and we kind of scouted around in the middle of the summer. And then the next time I was out there was in November, or late October, early November. So when I got out there that morning, Josh was like, man, we're going to park on this north side. And I was like, there's a road there. I wasn't too, fond of their idea. I was like, this is a bad idea. Where are you thinking, Josh? So he sets me up over here, and I'm like, I'm not going to see anything. Well, it turns out that, right, 15 minutes before daylight, I start seeing these bodies, they kind of come out for a little bit, and they go back in. I bet I saw 20 deer that day. And, it's kind of a weird setup because I was, less than 100 yards from the truck. So, enough with this boring, we're talking about topography, we're talking about fields, we're talking about all this, but let's talk about deer. So, one of the main reasons that me and Josh were so excited for this camera pull was because we have Buster and Tank, these two mature bucks that we saw last year, and we haven't really got a lot of intel on them since rifle season here in Oklahoma. So we're not real sure if they made it. We're hoping they made it, but you never know, especially with small parcels of land. The neighbors are pretty, both neighbors hunt, and you just really don't know if they're going to make it or not. So that was the main reason Josh and me were so excited about this first card pull.
Yeah, I've been, trying to get out there and pull this card for weeks now, and just, I was overly anxious about it, and finally today was the right day, got to go out, and I thought about, I had my card reader with me, and I was like, I'm going to put it in, I'm going to look at this stuff, and I'm going to hold it ransom over him. I'm just going to play games with him all day. And then I was sitting there, and I was like, that's not right. I know he's been waiting on this too, It's a big deal for us because this is kind of the first property we've done, hunt and manage on our own. And so I was, I decided to be nice to him just this once, put the card in my pocket, and then went and did everything, kind of did the rest of my recon and scouting and everything. And didn't exactly have the best results of what we wanted, but we had some good results that we ended up discussing, and we'll get a little bit more into that here in a little bit. But
before we go any farther, yeah, I got to tell the best part of this story. So, Josh, tells me, hey, man, I'm going out to the land. I'm going to go check that camera. I was like, all right, dude, I'm stoked. I can't wait to find out. One, that make sure my camera is alive because, it was in the pond. I was afraid it was going to get flooded. And then, two, to see what's on that card because I'm waiting, I'm hoping, I'm praying that our big boy, one of them shows up on there. And, really, Buster is a great deer with a lot of characteristic, but Tank is the one that I'm after. So, with that being said, Josh goes, he gets the card, he lets me know my camera's okay, and he starts heading back to town. This land's probably an hour away from where we live. I get off work, I tell Josh, I was like, hey man, just come by my house, we'll check out the camera, we'll check out the cards and everything and see what's going on. So, I go pick up my daughter, I'm headed home, and I get a call from Josh saying, hey man, I just broke down, can you come help me out? I was like, alright, so let's do this. So, we replaced the radiator in Josh's car, and then we came and we just decided, let's check out the card. We looked at it, we got some pretty good, some decent pictures on there. after all the rain came through, the pond raised up quite a bit, so I think the deer were just going around the pond once it raised. But we definitely got a lot of pictures of deer walking right in front of the camera. We're not going to post those online because nobody wants to see deer backs. But, you know, we did get some pictures of some does and a small bachelor group of bucks. And there's one buck in this group that, you know, is definitely a mature deer, and Josh seems to think that it is one of our shooters. You know, we can't really tell right now other than, you know, the couple of scratches that he has on his head, and one of them has a messed up ear. So it's like, we don't really know because we didn't get a picture of his good side. We got a picture of his bad side. So we don't really know. But there's definitely at least one mature buck still roaming around the property, and that makes us pretty excited.
Yeah, like he said, you know, I broke down, and as we're replacing the radiator, he's sitting there giving me some smack, and I just had to remind him, you know, I had the golden ticket in my pocket, and if he wanted to see it, he had to help me out. But yeah, like he said, you know, we have one picture, or I say one, we have several pictures of this, I'm pretty sure is one of our two main shooters. From the pictures and the distinct characteristics on his face, I'm sitting at about 80% sure that it is our Buster. He's roughly about a 150, 160 scored deer, but he's just an ugly looking antler. It looks like he's got two kind of clubs with some spikes on his head, but he's just got a body that makes him look like a just rodeo bull. Just big old body. Looks like he's on steroids. But the other, you know, and we talk about Tank quite often because he's gonna haunt Rob's dreams and nightmares for the rest of his life until he's dead. But he's probably roughly around a 180, 190, you know, antlered buck. His he's a little smaller body than Buster, but he's definitely got just the dream rack. I mean, it's just perfect mainframe 10 and everything. And he's got a slight roll to his nose too. That's why I'm kind of cautious on calling out who it is a little bit. But like Rob said, the few little scars on his head and stuff from the fights, and the numerous amount of pictures we had of Buster, I'm leaning toward it being Buster. So. And in the other picture we have with all the, you know, the bachelors and stuff, I think we might have a picture of our one buck who looks like he's got a little bit of a chewed off ear, or something. Looks like a pirate, so we called him Cap because he had a little hook on his brow tie. But it looks like he might have made it so far, and Buster, like I said. But again, you know, it's trying to find out which one it is. And with Tank being such an elusive deer and Buster being a semi-elusive deer, you need a little bit more of a body in the frame of the picture versus just a head and an occasional back shot.
So I think Josh is measuring these deer in centimeters. Buster and Tank, they're both great representations of the whitetail in the area that we hunt. And you know, Oklahoma up until this year was not necessarily known for a large whitetail state. You know, we're kind of a sleeper state. Guys should go check out that podcast episode. It's really cool. I think it's now the number is 36 whitetail were harvested in the state of Oklahoma this year. I
believe it was 37.
Okay,
actually.
well, 37 whitetail were harvested in the state of Oklahoma this year that all scored over 200 inches. And that's just deer that George Moore, the Pope and Young Boone and Crockett scorer, has scored himself, which is insane. It's really crazy, and you guys should definitely go check out those podcasts because there's a couple of them that I interviewed some of the 200-inch guys that harvested those 200-inch deer. So, you know, Tank is definitely a deer that I think about a lot. And, you know, this brings me back to a few years ago when we had another lease that we hunted on, and there was a deer that we called Obama that he haunted my dreams. You know, you spend so much time, you know, planning things, you know, watching where these deer come from on the trail camera, trying to figure out where he came from, where he's going. So you keep moving your trail cameras, you know, you're trying to figure out, get closer to their area. And, you know, once you find that one core zone that they feel safe in, you play your win right, you know, you go in, everything's perfect, and then you mess up the shot. That's kind of what happened. We're not really going to get into it right now. I'm kind of still salty about it.
We'll deal with that at a later point.
Yeah,
it's a good story.
I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, but we're not going to talk about that right now because we're here to talk about current issues such as Tank and Buster. So I hope Tank made it, and you know, Buster, he's a great deer, and you know, I'm excited if he made it too.
Yeah, like you said, Tank. You know, like you said, you know, he's our big boy. He's the trophy boy. He's the one you definitely mount the wall. And then again, there's Buster. Buster, for me, out of the two of them, is more of my go-to guy. I'm trying to get him more so than Tank, just because Buster and I had so many run-ins back and forth where we were just a second ahead of each other or a second behind each other. And, he kind of figured out where several of the cameras were, and he definitely liked to show off in front of him for, anywhere in time of upwards of almost 45 minutes at a time was just him alone on the camera, and it was, flashing up his rear end and everything, looking at you, kind of just staring at the camera. So for me, there's just been too much close run-ins and taunting from him that it's just it's a fight now with me and him. But I know Tank he's the one that Rob wants real bad, and I mean Tank is a beautiful deer, and we've only had one encounter with him where someone got eyes on him, and I was the one who got the eyes on him. But I mean it was a 300-yard plus shot, and it was through a tight window where he just stood there for a few seconds where it was long enough for me to identify him and get to watch him for a second, and then him decide that he wasn't going to follow the does all the way out in the open, and having to just settle with not getting to make the shot and everything, but on the upside getting to see the deer that's managed to elude all of us.
So Tank is definitely my main number one buck for this year. I will focus on him the best I can. There's other areas that I hunt at. There's a couple little things that I do in other areas. So I'm sure there'll be other opportunities for deer. But when a deer plays and gets into your dreams, there's a certain type of feeling you have with that deer. It's a connection almost. If you'll take that, there's a connection I have with this deer, and I'm hoping that it'll help me and him connect with my arrow this year. That's where I'm going with that. You like how? Yeah, you like how I put that in there?
Connection. That was a nice connection there.
So, me and Josh, Josh and me spend a lot of time together in the outdoors, whether it be us going to mess around at the river that's here pretty close to the house, or most of our time is spent around deer. And Josh and me, we're going to try to do a lot of video content this summer, so I hope you guys will tune in for that. Either check out the Devoted Outdoorsman on Facebook, or go to YouTube and check out the Devoted Outdoorsman's YouTube page, or channel. We're going to be posting more and more content on there as summer starts ramping up, as we start getting more velvet pictures, as we start, doing our food plots and getting our tree stands all set up and everything. We're definitely going to be putting out more content, so you guys should definitely check all that out. And Josh didn't find any sheds today.
Okay, we don't have to go too far in depth on that, but you go out and you're by yourself, and it's a lot. We have a lot of ground at this property to cover, and I've only been shed hunting for 2-3 years now, so I'm not the best at it, but we figured, with, having more daylight and that correlating more with bucks finally starting to drop all their antlers and everything, and people around the area where we hunt and other areas of the state are coming up with lots of sheds. So I figured I'd get a chance, I'd go out and I'd look and see if I could manage just to find us one of Tank's or Buster's or even Captain's antlers, and I couldn't even find anybody's. But the areas like Rob and I talked about earlier is, a lot of it is real thick and real hard to get to, and we're pretty sure that that's where they're spending majority of their time right now with, the crazy weather changes and everything we're having and the time of day and everything. So getting back there definitely would require, I'd say, 2 people, just with one without having any cell phone reception or anything. You don't want it to go in there and take a fall and no one know you're out there. But went around, I looked as much as I could, couldn't find anything. Went to areas that I know the deer frequent, especially the bucks, and like I said, it was disappointing to not find anything. I had several sticks that got me excited, and then I look up and I get close enough to them and I realize it's just a debarked branch or something. It irritate me and stuff, but I noticed that as I got closer to that, I'd start seeing, several areas where you could tell deer had been digging, trying to get to fresh green, growth and stuff. And then areas that, you walk a little bit past that, and all of a sudden there's an area that we were out there the last time was just hard, grass and everything, and now it's trampled down mud, and you're seeing activity that was, at the most maybe 12 hours old, and following it out to areas that are very heavily where we've seen a lot of deer in the past, where we're hoping to see a lot of deer in the future. and even getting to see new areas that they're traveling through and stuff that they're wearing out, and getting to see different things they're trying to eat, forage, all that, bed, and just trying to work around it and start trying to get a feel of what the, pattern of them is.
So this is kind of off topic, but what broadheads are you going to use this year?
To be honest, I haven't quite made up my mind yet. I mean, I've floated back and forth over the years between, the Rage expandables to Havocs to, I tried those radioactive looking ones. What are they called? What are they? What's
toxic.
The word? Yeah, the toxic broadheads. And, I saw some stuff on them. Thought I'd just try them out. I haven't actually found one that I'm just, 100% down, dead set on yet. But, we still got some time throughout the year, some stuff I want to look at, try some different products out. And we'll see what happens from there.
Dude, I think you definitely should use some of those arrows that have, like, the 5-inch cut. Like the blades, like, pop out. Like, I just feel like that's the kind of arrow you need, man. If you guys didn't know, I'm joking. I'm not saying that those arrows don't work. I'm just saying that I don't think those are a good idea for Josh. But with that being said, I'm going to be using the G5, the Havocs, again this year. Absolutely love them. Haters are going to hate, but I love them. And, I've actually thought about switching over to the Rage world, but I've had so many people tell me about them breaking, and that worries me. I haven't had a Havoc fail yet on me. The only thing that's kind of annoying is those silly little rubber bands. But if you guys want to check out the Havoc review we did, it's on the Devoted Outdoorsman's Facebook page, I do believe, and it's also on the YouTube channel. So if you want to go check that out, it's on there. I talk about them. I show some holes of animals that were harvested with them. It's pretty cool. So with that being said, let's kind of transfer over to
minerals. Before we transfer over, though, we got to make sure that, you keep in mind that you use the Havocs, but we need to work on your target practice because you have a managing tactic of losing broadheads too.
I only lost one broadhead. That whole story is because if you guys listened to the podcast a few weeks ago when Josh was on here, we kind of touched on that story. So we kind of talked about it. I don't want to redo the same thing, but Josh shot his first deer with his bow this year. And, Josh shot it with the Rage, so, he's all rage this, let there be blood, whatever it is. But I'm not saying they're bad broadhead. Lots of people love them. To each his own. So, what happened was I spent all summer, getting my broadheads and everything tuned in. I got new blades and new bands. I got my nocturnals set up. And Josh shot his deer, and then I shot a hog, 15 minutes later. I wouldn't say a big hog, maybe 150 pounds. And it swam across the river with my broadhead. And my bolt, everything. It just swam away. It's gone. So, that's what Josh is referring to. It's not really funny. I was really upset at the moment because, I had spent all this money to get it all set up, and then I lost it, but I guess it happens. Anyways, since Josh wants to keep bringing up old stories, let's talk about minerals. When do you, are we going to use 365 this year, or are we going to use the actual rocks, you think, the trophy rocks?
I think there's been several places you and I, we talked about it and we've looked at, setting up just the rock itself and putting some corn around it, kind of, give something that brings their heads up a little bit higher where they're going to look. And then we, other areas we talked about putting the 465 down just to give a better cast out into the plants and stuff, kind of help the, land out itself. And, beneficial to the deer and other animals as well. But, yeah, I think we're going to end up using both. More so probably the 465, but we'll see how it all plays out.
Or we could go to Tractor Supply, get one of those big salt blocks, and then we could just, crush it up, and it could be our own 365.
If you want to take the time to smash it up.
I got a big hammer. Well, let's go to something else here. So, me and Josh are going to plant some food plots this year. We're kind of excited. It's kind of weird. A lot of people kind of look at us funny when we say, oh, we're going to plant food plots when we have a, 60-acre soybean field / winter wheat field right next door. So there is a problem with this. So soybeans great all summer. You can go out there, you can see lots of deer in the soybeans. But in Oklahoma, deer season starts October 1st. So, you know what happens in mid-October, everything starts to change, then they cut all the beans out. So, after they cut the beans out, which this year was pretty early, I would say like October 20th, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it was like the next to last weekend, or the last weekend of October, it was all gone.
Yeah, it was all gone. It was just a field, with, just bean trimmings, and the deer were still coming out on that, and they were, there was beans here and there, so they're eating that definitely, but then there's a long time when there's nothing out there. It's just a big dirt field. And that in those times, that's when we would put out, some corn or whatever to kind of draw the deer into certain areas. And what was crazy about it is we could put one bag of corn out and come back the next day and it would be gone. Because the deer were keying in on that corn and just eating a whole bag in one night. And that gets kind of expensive. So this year what we're going to do is we're going to plant a couple food plots. I think we're going to go with like some turnips and maybe some clover and definitely some winter wheat because it's pretty cheap and I think it's easy to grow. I'm not saying me and Josh necessarily have green thumbs, but we're going to try. We're going to give it a shot.
Yeah, just kind of more stuff that'll be there late season. Just something that'll last longer through going into the winter, going into late bow season. Just another reason for them to come out of the bedding areas, out of the woods, kind of more out so into the open where we can watch them a little bit more and get more opportunities to take a shot.
So the process that we're going to go through to do our food plots, I think we're going to do it. We don't have a lot of machinery. We're, we've said before in podcasts, I've said before for sure, is that we're just average guys. We're not big, superstars. We don't have all these sponsors, and we don't have, all these people that are, letting us borrow equipment. We don't have a lot of money. Josh works a full-time job. I work a full-time job, both married with kids. Josh has got a baby on the way, and he's definitely going to be hunting next year. We're going to, strap him up or something, We have him in the stand.
I'll put him on the back. We'll go.
So a lot of the stuff we do is going to be, just a lot of, let's put it as something Grant Woods would say, sweat equity.
Yes.
That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a lot of that this summer, trimming and cutting stuff out. Definitely killing stuff down, getting to the dirt so we can get some food in the ground or some seeds in the ground come August and September. So we don't really know. We're hoping it's going to turn out great, but, sometimes in Oklahoma, stuff just doesn't want to grow sometimes when it doesn't rain and such. So like we were talking about earlier, we had another lease several years ago, and the last year we had that lease, I guess it would be the second to last year we had that lease. No, it was the last year, wasn't it?
It was the last year.
The last year we had that lease, we planted several pretty good sized food plots, and one of them had chicory and winter wheat, and that one actually... That one was on one of the areas my little brother hunted, and it was super green, and it looked really nice. Even late into the year, even the next year when we came back, which I didn't think chicory did that, but the next year when we came back in the summer to kind of dismantle everything, the chicory was still growing. So I think that might be something that we throw in there too, is some of that chicory, just to see what's going on, and then we can use our trail cameras to kind of pick and choose what the deer like the most. We kind of key in. Maybe we'll do like a strip of like winter wheat, and then like a strip of radishes, and then a strip of the
chicory and stuff.
Chicory, just so we can kind of see what the deer are eating at different types of year.
We could also add in prescribed fire like your dad did.
Yeah, for sure. My dad, this is kind of a silly story, but so my dad, we had this giant brush pile because my dad borrowed a tractor. We piled up all this brush, kind of cleaned everything out, and he burned it one night, or one day, I would say. He started in the morning, and he burned, and, it burned all day. And when he went to leave that night, he said, there was just one log, just basically a stump, and he said it wasn't burning. There weren't a lot of coals. It was just, a little bit of smoke. So they poured some water on it, and they left. Well, the next weekend when we came out,
it was you and I who came out and discovered it.
Yeah, it was me and Josh came out, and as soon as we pull in the gate, it's a pretty thick area we're driving, all of a sudden it's just black. And I'm just like, what happened here? And my dad ended up burning probably a good 15, 20 acre area of the lease that we had. And it was definitely an ordeal. But, the next, that spring, when I went back out there, dude, it was a very great area. All the cedar trees were gone, all the small cedar trees, and it was super lush and green, and it turned out to be a good thing for the property, even though some people weren't necessarily happy with it.
Yeah, I mean it was an interesting sight for us. I mean, like he said, you pull up and it's a fairly thick area as we're driving in, and there's a little bit of an opening, and you come in, and all of a sudden it's just really open and it's black everywhere, and it was like, okay, the neighbor property, there was actually a house on it, and so one of our first thoughts was we need to go check the house, and nothing was there, and he was good, and the house didn't. It ended up staying on our lease and everything and following through with it. But I mean, initially we were kind of upset. Is this going to mess up everything? All the work we've done, everything we've put into it, and we called his dad, told him everything, and we were like, okay. We kind of talked about it, figured out what we were going to do, and just came back a couple weeks later after discovering that, and we had noticed that it was really thick and lush and green coming in. And we probably saw 2 to 3 times the deer activity in that area that we had on the whole property the whole time we've been there.
Yeah, because that area necessarily wasn't a good... No one really hunted that area of the property because it wasn't necessarily an area where deer were drawn to. It was more like an area where we'd park. But after that burn, deer were definitely in there. There was lots of tracks in the parking area, so we kind of made jokes about how, it'd be a good area. We just need to start parking somewhere else, and we'll call it the parking spot, and it'll be like, you put a stand there and call it the parking spot. But so it was kind of an interesting ordeal. It kind of turned into something, though, because my dad's mishap with that, I ended up communicating with the guy that owned the property next door, and I ended up getting us permission to his 90 acres of property, which my brother ended up harvesting a pretty nice buck off of. I would say, I think it scored like 143 or 144. And
it was a beautiful buck. Monster body on him.
So, I guess all things come when it needs to happen. So, it was a very interesting time. And, something good came out of it. My little brother ended up harvesting a pretty good deer over there. And what's weird about that property that we ended up getting permission to was it was basically just the side of a hill. And you guys that are or that know about the Ozarks and stuff like that, this isn't necessarily the Ozarks, but it's real similar. Lots of rocks, not very much dirt. It's just kind of a weird spot, but there is a flat spot that the deer use to travel, and it's a pretty good spot, and that's where my little brother ended up harvesting that buck at. So we're gonna kind of end this podcast talking about our goals and just kind of expectations for next year. But before we start that, I want to let you guys know that my number one goal is that Tank is going to end up on my wall. It's going to happen. The connection, is going to happen, dude. Like, I gotta play it right. Play my cards right, make sure the wind goes, play the wind, and, make sure everything goes correctly, man. If I mess up, I don't think I'll have another opportunity.
I think you just need to listen to me again.
Is that what it is?
I think that's what it is. Come out and I set you up 30 yards from the truck and you're covered up in deer, you can't move.
Yeah, that was very... I never would have thought that was going to happen. I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, Josh is going to sit me up right here next to the truck and there's going to be all these deer. Never in my day, I never would have thought of that. Never. I thought, I'm not going to see anything. I'm going to hear cars going up and down the road all day. And it turned out to be actually a really good spot, and I think it's going to be a spot that we set a stand-up in this year for us to maybe take our kids out and our wives out. Maybe we'll get someone out there and get one with the crossbow or something.
Yep. So goal number 1 for Rob obviously is hoping that Tank made it and getting to put him up on the wall. Goal number 1 for me being Buster, same kind of thing, trying to get him up on the wall. Either way, we don't really care who harvests which one or even both of them, just as long as they, make it onto the wall somewhere, because these two deer they're haunting us. They're getting to us. I mean, there's been times we'll sit there and realize we've had an hour-long talk or phone call over just these two deer alone.
Something we didn't really talk about in this podcast is the other deer that up-and-comers that we could have. We had a lot of, 2-year-old, a lot of 3-year-old deer on camera this year that we necessarily didn't get a lot of, time. We never saw a lot of them in the field. We saw a lot of does. I think that's something we should definitely, focus on this year. I think we need to harvest some more does, and that would be a good thing for maybe get one of the wives or somebody out there on a doe in early season when there's still soybeans out there. And, I'm hoping, like Josh was talking about earlier, there's Cap. That's one of our younger deer that we're hoping made it. He's an awesome little buck. And, I hope he keeps that characteristic of the hook on his brow tie, because
sure.
it's just kind of a cool little thing that he's got going on there.
Yeah.
And then we had a couple other little basket racks hanging around, but especially with a food source of the soybeans and everything, and there's a lot of other row crop fields in the area. With that type of food source, I think that a deer can make a pretty good jump in 1 year. And we're not necessarily after trophies. We both would love to harvest 180-inch deer every year, or 150-inch deer every year. I would be happy with 125-inch deer every year as long as the deer is mature, and that's what me and Josh are really after. We're really after mature deer.
Yeah, hunting, like he said, hunting mature deer gives you the chance to, one, you get to harvest a buck or even a doe that's got a lot of characteristic, whether it's from their antlers to their body to just even their personality that they show. But it also helps, give you a chance the next few years to be able to hunt even more mature deer and stuff as you let your younger ones grow and everything. And that's one thing that we really want to focus on, because we would love for this property to be a long-term deal for us.
Yeah, we're definitely hoping that it will turn into something that if we spend some time, some sweat equity, and really focus on things, that it'll turn into a little hot spot, a little honey hole, if you'll put it, that we can hop into when we're not hunting on public or other places that we partake in this sport.
For sure. You just got to keep it a little bit of a secret too, ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. There's sometimes I feel like I talk too much, but at the end of the day, I want everyone to harvest a deer. And, if I happen to give away one of my best spots on public, that's why it's public. It's for everyone to use, and I'm happy to help people out. So if you're from out of state or you're from Oklahoma and you're trying to get on some public land in northeastern Oklahoma, let me know, guys. I got a lot of good places, and I'll give you guys a little bit of intel. I'm not going to give you my best spot. No, I won't, but I'll point you in the direction so maybe you can find your best spot.
For sure. And like you said, being public landers, we're all public landowners here. It's all our land. And any chance we can get to help people out, get them out there, and be able to experience, even if you just get to see the deer, not even get a shot off or something, even turkeys or something, just to get you out there, we're all for helping hook you guys up.
Another goal for this year, before we end this, is for me not to shoot hogs and not be able to find them.
Yeah, I think that's a goal you really need to work on.
Dude, there were good shots, man. There was blood both times. Just, one time I went across the river, and the other time I was in the middle of nowhere, and I was just like, I've been following, been following it for hours. I don't really know where I'm at, and then I hit that road, and I was like, either I keep following it and get lost, or I go back to the truck. Well, I came back the next day and picked up blood, and it kept going, and I think I just hit a little bit far back, got liver, and who knows what ended up happening to it. But this year, that's definitely a goal, is to get a couple more hogs under each one of our belts. So with all that being said, guys, I hope you guys like this little BS session we just did. It's kind of like a little extra thing. Me and Josh actually started recording earlier. We're going to do like an intro to the podcast. And then I was like, dude, forget that. I've got so much to talk about. You got so much to talk about. Let's just talk and record it and see, what happens. So we recorded this little thing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know if you hate it. That's cool too, so we can correct ourselves. If there's something you don't like, let us know. If we don't know, we can't really fix it. So
if there's something you guys would even like us to discuss, maybe from stuff that we've experienced or stuff that we, you might be dealing with, and seeing if we want, or if we've dealt with it, anything you guys want us to talk about, maybe discuss and help you guys get answers, please let us know.
Yeah, and definitely if you guys know someone or you would like to come on the podcast yourself, I get a lot of people that want to come on the podcast, and I can't necessarily have everyone on the podcast. I'm sorry, guys, but I will do the best I can. I plan on making these podcasts for a long time, so if you'll message me on Facebook, I'll see what I can do, especially if you got a cool story, and you don't necessarily have to have a cool story. You could be a beginner or you could be an expert hunter. Just, let's get on here, let's share the love, and talk about the sport that we all share and love. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, and maybe there will be some more of these little BS sessions to come. With that being said, the Devoted Outdoorsman logging off.